Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Private Investigator Experience. Your host is Phil Little, and I'm Wade Little. Well, today we have a very special show lined up for you. We have a guest, and our guest is a special guest for us because he not only goes way back to West Coast detectives history, but our family as well. But before we start, I want to remind everyone that if you have not yet subscribed, if you would please do that, hit the like buttons, whatever buttons you need to hit, please do that. We appreciate that, your support. Also tell your friends, tell your family about the show, let them know what's going on and let them join as well. So we love to make it maybe a family affair. What do you say? All right. So we also have an email address, and that email address is pi777@gmail.com. So we'd love to hear from you. Please send us any questions you may have, just to say hi, whatever it may be. Go ahead, send us an email, and we will respond. All right. So now let's get right into our show and take a look back at one of our team members who was also what we call family. Dad,
Yeah,
how you doing?
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing good, Wade. Thank you. Yeah, and for those of you that are watching and see the black screen, well, we could say that Rocky is deep undercover and we can't show his face, and that's a little true. But also, there was a little technical issue, and we all have those. But we've
So
had
what it means,
thousands of people.
what it means though, is that we all have to have him on again so everybody can see his beautiful smiling face.
That's correct. Very good, Wade. We've had thousands of team members and so many talented men and women over the last 50 years that I've had the agency, and back to 101 years old. But when I think of Rocky Galiente, he just goes by Rocky or The Rock. I smile because when Rocky joined us over 25 years ago, and we were reflecting the other day when we were talking and trying to both of us remember when that was, he became very quickly a valuable part of our family at West Coast Detectives by his actions and his life, his integrity, and his professionalism. And after 9/11, he worked a lot with me on some operations that we were doing. We had some events out in Las Vegas and other places. Maybe we'll touch on those. But it became aware to me that when I had a need for protection for my daughter, that Rocky was the man. All I needed was one rock. So, Rocky, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure, Phil. Also, Wade. Hello. Good to see both of you again. Great to catch up. And I see, Phil, that you're still pressing forward with new creative ideas like this podcast. And that is awesome. I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, if you keep going, though, you're going to catch up to me. We were talking the other day a little bit about retirement and all
Yes,
that.
sir.
So
Yep.
it seems like it's coming up there. But, I think we came to the conclusion that someplace it was like the end of the 1990s that you came on board. Where did you grow up and how did you start in your desire to get involved in this whole broad private detective area, training academy, and investigative area? Where did it all start?
Okay. Well, I was born in Texas and my parents moved to Los Angeles in the 60s. So most of my childhood, I lived in East Los Angeles. And in my teens, I grew up basically in the San Gabriel Valley. When I first decided to become a private investigator, that's after working, I think in 1994, I was working at a Dryer's ice cream plant. And there I was a member of our safety coordination team. And part of my duties as a safety coordinator was the responsibility was to investigate on-the-job accidents, take reports, and advise on ways to prevent similar occurrences from happening again or in the future. So from there, I kind of became pretty good at figuring stuff out because you would have guys file claims, but you knew that we would figure out that they went out that weekend. Maybe they were out partying or whatever, and they would come in and all of a sudden they would claim an injury. And then we'd start doing background check and finding out, and then we'd interview people, and then we'd find out that that's not true what happened. So-and-so was out drinking and he was horsing around and he fell or whatever. So from there, I said, this is something I'm pretty good at, figuring this out. So that's what I kind of like, what got me pushed to wanting to do that, to being a private investigator,
Well, it's interesting that the field you're talking about reminds me, when I first started, came out of law enforcement, and the first thing I did was insurance reports where I went around and visited people that were supposedly injured. Then it went into insurance investigation. And then I got into auto accidents before I took over West Coast Detectives. So that seems like it's a place that a lot of us start. But how did you find out about West Coast Detectives, and how did you become attached to the academy? Because you were also instructing in this area of private investigation, I think, too, weren't you?
Yes, that is correct. In 2000, I got my private investigator's license, and I worked under several different companies, and I just learned the ropes. And what it was, where I started was basically sub rosa, just doing the workman's comp insurance stuff. So what we would do is what they would call AOE, COE, which is that stands for arising out of employment, cause of employment. Basically, what it means is that something will happen because you work. Like Joe was working here and a bunch of pallets fell on top of him. Well, that arose out of his employment. That happened that way. And then there's other ones that, like carpal tunnel. That's a good example of a cause of employment, where it's a long
Right.
history of doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, I got my private investigation license in 2000. So it took a while because you got to put in the hours that's required by BSIS, which is usually turns out to be about 3 years worth of grinding away. But in that course, when you're doing this, you learn how to interview people and take statements. And it's a lot of work, but in the end, it pays off. Once you get your license, it's a great feeling. But with your company, somebody referred me, I believe, and said, "Hey, they're looking for somebody." And I reached out and it was a match made in heaven.
Yes.
So that's how, and look at, it was great, great move because I consider ourselves great friends. So loved your family and I still love your family very much and
Yeah.
feel like
Rocky,
you touch with you all the time.
so starting out, especially in that field, when you have to investigate these, we'll say, alleged accidents or incidents or things like that, what, if you can, thinking back, what was the percentage of real injuries versus fake injuries?
It's tough either way because that's a toughie because some of them are legitimately hurt. So I would say like maybe 70-30, 70 fraudulent, 30%. You never want to look at it that way because what you do, you have a blank canvas and you want to paint a picture. So you want to take everything that after you take all the statements of everybody and you start to figure things out. And that's why you go interview. And one interview will lead to another interview and you start painting a picture of the stuff. And then you're set up to go out and do your investigative out in the field. So, and that's how you've kind of figured out. But yeah, I would say that back in the day, it was really like 70% were fraudulent around there.
Rocky, when you came to the academy, we'd started that in 1990. What were you instructing? I didn't remember where it was specific, or did you do several different classes on different parts of investigation when you were instructing at the West Coast Detectives Academy?
What I did there was I taught the workman's comp investigations, how to
Mm.
start, how to get everything done. Now, what the insurance investigators are looking for. There's a lot of
Right.
details that go into that you have to know as an investigator in the field, because ultimately, if you go to court, you have to have all your ducks in a row because one little mistake, even a different time stamp on your camera will get your stuff thrown out of court. So what I basically taught there was the workman's comp and then how to set up investigations from interviewing personnel, from interviewing employees that have been injured, it was report writing, the surveillance part, how to tail people, and how to basically the two biggest things that you have to learn PI is one, this is always funny because when we would teach the class, we would immediately lose a few people just because I would tell them, hey, from this day forward, from day one, you will be writing reports because as a private investigator, you're not going to be driving around in a Ferrari, carrying a gun, being Magnum PI. That's not going to
Mhm.
happen. That's the movies.
Mm.
You're going to work long hours in a hot car. You're going to be proving or disproving the claim. So
Mm.
that's what I would teach from A through Z. And most of the students that graduated from West Coast Detectives, they actually went on to do very well.
Yes.
A couple went on to NBC, special investigations, and a lot of them went on to the insurance field and actually became investigators. And I kept in touch with them for several years. And that was pretty good teaching. There were so many different people that we would teach also at the academy. So you would take law enforcement officers that come from a long career being a law enforcement officer, and then you have to make them a regular Joe because you can't use all the tools that you use as an officer of the law to cultivate information. Now you have
Right.
to figure stuff out on the field
Yeah.
without that. Because in court, they will ask you, how did you come across this information? It was interesting. A lot of these investigations were very interesting. I
Well,
did some really, really funky ones.
yeah, it was what was always rewarding for me was the large volume of graduates of West Coast detectives that went on many in careers, but so many started their own businesses. And I helped many of them. And some of them were women. We had women become very successful in the private investigating field. And some of them today are still operating. I'm going to be having some of them on. So that was a rewarding part of us at the West Coast of being able to really get people started in the field. And I know another area that we've worked a lot on that you have also been in. How did you make this transition into personal protection, executive protection, or the bodyguard? When did that transition happen and how did that come about?
Wow. Well, that goes even further back. I've always been involved with Hollywood. So getting to the bodyguard stuff, when I started that, I started like most people started. You think I want to do this, the high end gigs, but you quickly learn if you're do the security work like the high end bodyguard stuff, you stay away from certain clients after a while. They're not worth it. So what I mean by that is that you got to know who the clients are, because what
Right.
basically want to do is just keep the client out of harm's way. You do not want to put the client in harm's way. And that just seems like some of the rappers and the celebs, that's what they were basically. No, they think that they have you there and that you're going to back them up in any situation. And your goal is just to get them from A to Z safely and without any problems. So
Hmm.
then I just decided I'm going to transition to the high end security world, which pays a lot better, lucrative, and it's fun.
Well, how did threat management fit in? As you know, it was 1989 when Rebecca Schaefer was killed that changed all of really the industry, Hollywood, and all to understand this problem. When you would get a call or be sent out on an assignment, I know you worked a lot with the West Coast, and I'll get into my daughter just a little bit, I'm working with her, but how did you approach that threat management area when you say, okay, I've got to go protect this person? What were some of the things that you thought about that you needed to know or do with this post Rebecca Schaefer threat management professional units that had been built with for the police departments?
Okay, so for me, that's kind of a little bit of a tricky question. I'll just put it this way. The first and foremost for me, when you do something like this, it's going to be safety. Safety is first and foremost. Integrity and professionalism. You have to be a pro when you do this kind of stuff. So you got to
Right.
know who the client is that you are protecting. You got to know their background. You got to do your homework, on your client to see what kind of threats, the who, what, when, and why. And you also got to know how to handle different situations, mitigate certain situations before they become actual threats. I think the question you're asking is what my approach or how do I do it or
Right. Well, yeah, I
okay.
think it's so I think we all understand that the threat management changed where we needed to know everything we could about the person, about their threats, how they got them, had they been getting them before,
Absolutely.
what was going on around them now. We worked a lot at the studios and all, but I
Yeah.
think it changed our philosophy from being just a bodyguard. In the old days, it was
Absolutely.
get the biggest guy you could find and put him out on
Yes.
assignment with a gun.
Absolutely. And now for the high end stuff, a lot of the work that we do now, first thing you got to know who you're protecting and why you're protecting them. And then you got the advanced planning stage. You got to know your routes, your mapping, the entrances, exits, even parking. You have a contingency plan when you're ready in case anything
Yes.
happens. And what's the occasion? What are you going out and do? Are you going to just out to dinner? Are you going to a show? Is he going to be a speaker? I've done several events here for the city of Los Angeles where I've had people run up on the stage and I'm hired to protect certain individuals or a group of individuals, and they'll hire a different security team. And it's just weird that some of these guys are not ready.
Right.
Today, the people don't have like the school mindset that we used that we had back in the day. A lot of people are on their cell phones these days. And, it just takes only 3 seconds to close in on a person, and then you got problems, buddy.
Uh, they're not professional, is what you're saying.
Yes,
We could,
it takes a lot of work, and you gotta get it. You gotta train the guys, and you gotta trust your partner. I mean, you really have to trust your partners with your life. That's the way we roll with our guys, our units. We really trust each other. We're basically a family. We all want to go home, and we definitely want to go home safe. The world has changed right now. So this will maybe give you an idea of what I'm into. So right now, I
yeah,
deal a lot with my clients. There's a lot of anti-Semitism going on. There's a lot of attacks going on, and you don't really see that in the news because for some reason, I don't know why, they keep that kind of stuff out. But you'll see that what's going on, and now you have the different government here with our district attorneys and stuff like that that just aren't. They're not doing their job. They're not doing what they got paid hard to do or voted in to do. Nobody wants
that's
to be
right.
the bad guy,
Right.
but
Well,
yeah.
there's so many different types of assignments. And I know that West Coast, the operations Wade has run, and we've all run. Sometimes we have a one-man operation, or sometimes we have 4 or 5. But in the private sector, it's usually a one-man operation. And
Yeah.
we could talk all night about cases, but I was thinking about a situation. I wanted to, and Wade might have some input here along too. Wade, just jump in at any time. But there was one situation I wanted to know how you approach dealing with this. My assistant JJ was a maid of honor and for her friend's wedding, and they were taking the bride to be to Las Vegas for her bridal party or her bachelorette party. And I
Yes, sir.
volunteered to have Rocky, the Rock, take them in the limo and watch over them for a few days. How did all that work out? Tell us about that adventure of going to Vegas and then some of the things that you had to deal with.
Phil, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, okay?
I've heard that.
Yeah, it was fun. They had a great time, and basically you pick them up and provide their vehicle, and then first and foremost, always safety with them, and take them to their spots they had to go to or wherever they're going, and then work the door for them. What I mean by that is whatever club they wanted to go to, and just be there and be ready and vigilant, and the whole thing, just protect them. Don't let anybody ruin their good time. But the funny thing though is that it's just funny because not only protecting them as you're the bodyguard, but you also got to know some stuff because on that day, on that weekend, what I recall is, I don't remember if you remember, but the car overheated and the thermostat went out, right? So
Yes.
there was no shops open on Sunday. So guess who's the mechanic? I'm luckily I know how to fix cars, so I replaced it, and the trip went flawless. Yeah,
Yep.
times, and JJ is awesome. I love her. I still follow her. You know,
Yep.
well, everybody's worked for you. Phil has been great. They're all good people. I mean, how can you not
Yeah.
be good when you're around?
Yeah.
Hey,
Even
so
your
Rocky,
family. Your family's awesome.
so when you're on a one-man job like that, and your clients are in the club, what do you do at that time frame? How do you monitor what's going on? Are you waiting for them to contact you? Run us through kind of just quickly. What's your mindset? What's going on when you're outside and they're inside?
Well, if you can, you want to shadow them as much as you can. So you want to you want to keep an eye on them if you can. What I generally like to do is I'll find security and I'll point them out and I'll give either my contact information to them and work that angle. If I can be inside, I love to be inside. And if you have a driver, it's awesome. But if you're driving, that's a whole different ballgame. So you got to find a place to put the car. Usually just work out some money and tell them we want to leave the car up front. Well, when you have a limo, you can leave it out front most of the time or an SUV, but you want to be close to your client at all times and keep them as safe as you can. Be ready because, sometimes we get a little too inebriated if we go out or some of the guests will, so be ready. That's just funny because you got to be ready for all that. I mean, we get into that, but you got to have the bags ready and all that stuff because you don't want to be cleaning a car at 2 o'clock in the morning, if you know what I mean.
Well, I can tell you from my experience with Rocky that if anyone was watching and they needed a one-man unit to handle the impossible, well, he's the man. I remember another time in Vegas that you were our one-man operation. We had a convention there with As Is Expo, and we were at the Wind Towers. I had a presidential suite and I had 5 other suites and 4 other rooms. We'd brought people in, our contacts and agents from different parts of the world. And Rocky was the point guy. for all of this. He got us in clubs. He got us in restaurants that there was no way to get in. And we had a general there from Pakistan, and the general wanted to play golf. And
I
guess who
remember
got
him.
him on the golf course, along with everything else? So, Rocky, it's been a while now, but for years, 10 years after that, I was getting comments from our different team members who are saying, when are we going to do Vegas again? But that was a great experience, and you made that. And I'll never forget, everybody had gone except you, and I think you and I were the only one in the limo coming back. Other people had gone different ways. And we came out of the hotel and down through the casino, and I don't gamble much. And we sat down at the roulette table, and I was playing there. And I got up to like $400 or $450. And I had this tap on the back of my shoulder and whisper said, Phil, maybe it's a good time for us to leave. And so I picked up my $450 and left it. I left Vegas with money. So that
Yeah.
was really good. But, we could talk so much. We could talk for hours, Rocky. But the other
Yes, sir.
thing that made you really integral part of our family was when my daughter was about 10, and she'd been in show business about 5 years, and she was getting all kinds of notoriety and things. And I knew I needed some help with her. And I looked
Yeah.
around and said, who could do that? And there was The Rock. And so you became such a part of her and our family, and all her friends loved having their daughters go out with her because you were there taking care of them all. But tell us the memory of first meeting Nicolette and some of your experiences with dealing with a young girl and by yourself. You don't have a woman around to help. But how did you deal with all
Yeah.
this?
Well, Nikki was a little dynamo, man. I'm telling you, that kid was full of energy, big time. And then I remember your housekeeper, I forget her name.
Amy.
I remember her telling me that there's been several other drivers that Nikki didn't like, right? So I'm like, okay, well, there's a reason probably. But I said, but I helped raise a lot of nieces and nephews. I have no children of my own, but I raised a lot of nieces and nephews, and I know like how to deal with them. And she listened to me, and she was fun. You got to be a friend and a parent at the same time, unlike where you have to be the parent and be strict all the time. I could give her a little leeway, and sometimes I'd pay for stuff I shouldn't be paying for, but just to make peace and keep everything smooth, so she wouldn't be bugging you. That was the fun part about it,
Yeah.
And but Nikki was a blast and taking her places, and I remember like taking her to the gym, taking her to school. She at first did not like the idea of the limousine; it would embarrass her. She'd like take me in. What was the Ford? You had the Aviator, I think it was. What was that
Yes.
car? That
I had an Aviator.
and she said, "Take me in that vehicle, or take me in Jag, I think you had, or the Hummer, one of those." And
Yeah.
I was like, no, the limo's a lot fun. It's a lot more fun. You could pick up your friends, and we could take them to lunch at In-N-Out Burger. And man, that light came on. Right. So at lunchtime, we'd go to make an In-N-Out Burger run or stuff like that. And those little things just help make things a lot easier for you and for myself as well.
You were such a blessing in her life, and she still talks about that today. And we talk about
That's
that.
awesome.
And then
Yeah.
you're being able to deal with all those kids and
Danielle.
having 5, 6, or 7 girls. I don't know. Maybe you had some guys I don't know where any of her young
Yeah.
men friends.
Yeah, a couple of guys who came in the car with us, and they were just like, they were scared of me, and that was so funny,
Yeah,
right?
good.
Because I remember it was Danielle, Brittany, Sarah, those
Yep.
girls were her friends, and we'd go pick them up, and the parents were, "That's cool, hey, you'll be with them," and so that was my thing, is like just to keep them safe and stuff. I have a
Yeah.
couple stories. We went to a Magic Mountain, and I was like, "Oh, geez, I'm not getting any rides with you girls, though. That's for damn sure." But yeah, in the park, they run everywhere. So man, my big butt had to go, running around after them. But yeah, you just keep your eye on them, make sure they're safe. Good times. But
There's one event I remember. I'm not sure I want to talk about this, but on Halloween,
oh my,
I didn't know about this. You dressed up all these girls and you took them out trick or treating. Oh my goodness.
yes.
But they loved it. I heard a lot of
Oh, I don't.
great comments.
Yeah, I barely remember that.
You were
Yes,
creative.
I know. I did a lot of stuff with Nikki, and I remember when she was about 9 or so, I had this little talk with her. I said, "Look, you're about to be a teenager. I know our relationship's going to change." And then when she was a teenager, there was times where Dad was out traveling or working out elsewhere, and I had to drive her and stuff to her friends around. I am still scarred by those events of
Yeah.
teenage girls. It just,
Yes.
I have nightmares.
Nikki
Oh,
would
wait.
commandeer the radio all the time, and then she'd twist it the knob, so she would only hear the speakers on her side. I'd be like, "You're driving me nuts by doing that." We need equal sound in the car.
Well, you both
Good
had
time.
some experiences there with her. That was good.
Yes,
But
sir.
that was such a blessing, Rocky. You were amazing and everything that you did. And it's great to hear that you're doing well. I know you went through some physical issues a couple of years ago, and God
Oh,
blessed you
yeah,
through
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
I'm just
That
excited about the future for you. But if you had someone came to you, a young person, and said, "I want to get into the private investigator," or we used to get the resumes from everybody, they wanted to be a bodyguard to a Hollywood person. But if someone
yeah.
wanted to get in the private investigative field, what would you tell them today how to go about doing that? What advice would you give them?
Number one, I would say sharpen up your writing skills. Definitely, because report writing, just let them know the truth. I always tell new investigators because when you're older and you try to become a PI, it's a lot different. I mean, when you're young, you can go different places. You can do the hours, man. But I'm telling you, when you start an investigation, you're there early. I won't say the hour because in case people are listening that our workman's comp, we don't tell them the hour we start. But you're there early. You wait till they move, and sometimes they don't move at all. I remember a couple times working in the summer in Palm Springs, and it was hot. And you can't sit in the front of your vehicle. You gotta how to position yourself in your car. And there's ways to keep yourself cool and stuff. But it's just funny. Some of these investigations where you're sitting in your car and you're about, okay, 8 hours is up. I'm gonna go home now. You're ready to wrap it up, and that's when they decide to move. And then they'll stop at the store and you gotta walk into the store behind them, and you get out and you can't even walk because your legs have been all twisted
Right.
up. Anyway,
Right.
but I would tell them it's a young person's game, PI. Women
Right.
do make the best investigators. Women are very good. I always said that
Yep.
because ladies, you get some information. I've used a lot of them to send them in on missions. When they come back out, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of info. That guy just gave it up, huh? You know?
Right.
And they're and
Well, pretty fair.
and the women are pretty smart that have some of the claims, but yeah, a lot
Right.
I have lots of what is these other days we can talk about some of these stories, but great stories, investigative stories, commandeering telephone vehicles. Money moves a lot, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's young people realizing there's a lot of mundane, like you said, a lot of waiting. But we're excited to be able to still have you part of our family. And I know that God's got a great future for you. We'll keep praying for you and
Thanks,
we'll
sir.
connect. We'll find a time when the cameras are all working everywhere. But
Yes,
Wade,
sir.
do you have any last words or comments or thoughts for Rocky?
Well, I don't know about last words or comments, but it is great to hear just how well you're doing, Rocky. And we talked a
Thanks,
little
man.
bit off camera about some of the stuff you're doing, that it's sensitive type of work, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. And it's great that there's people like you who are doing that, who are actively working to keep people safe. Great. So well done. Keep up the good work. And it's hard work, as you talked about. We know that. And
Yes.
because so many people today, they don't want to put the time in or the energy. They just want the rewards. And
Work ethic is out the window for some
that's right.
reason. I blame it all on social media. Sometimes I have turnover with new guys because they come in and they think that it's just going to be standing around on your phone. And that's the first thing I'll take away from you, and then we get into some arguments. I'm like, that's not the way we work. Well, that's the way we used to work at this company. Well, that's why you're here. And that's why you're not here now.
Yeah,
I work
exactly.
for some companies where you cannot mess around. I mean, no sunglasses, no this and that. And they'll send you home. You fly into different states. Those are the undercover gigs. There's no messing around. You're working. You may be
Right.
working 8 hours on a shift undercover, but you're going to be report writing. So your shift will turn into like maybe 14 hours the day before you lay down. It's work. You're
It
going to work,
is.
but you get paid. It
Right.
pays well, but you're going to put the
That's
time
right.
in it. That's how it works.
That's right. Well, I think as
Awesome.
we start to wind up here, and it's been a great show. I can't believe how long we've gone, but it's been great, and you made this really enjoyable, Rocky. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. And again, we do look forward to having you on where we can see that smiling face of yours.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that'll happen soon. So everybody out there, once again, we want to thank you for joining us today. And if you haven't, once again, please hit the subscribe button. Let us know that you're out there. Tell your friends, tell your family. Heck, even tell your enemies. Let them join us. We can all get along in this world, right? To some degree or another.
Absolutely.
And so also remember our email address. It's plittle777. I'm sorry, wait a minute. It's plittle pi 777 gmail.com. So we really, truly do appreciate everybody's support out there. Write us, let us know you're out there, any questions. Maybe you have something going on investigative wise that we can answer some questions, maybe help you out, get you pointed in a direction. So with that being said, again, Rocky, thank you very much. Dad, you have any last thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Wade. Thank you, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Rocky. And to all our listeners and viewers, may you be safe and may God bless you and may God bless America. See you next time.